Hey everybody, Alex Tarris here. I am a health equipment and technology researcher. I'm also a dealer, distributor, consultant, all of the above for everyday people or practitioners. I have relationships with close to, I think, 90 different health companies now, a whole vetted network of manufacturers. And if you have questions about any particular brand, just email me. My email address is right below in the description box of the video. And subscribe if you do find this video helpful. It does help my channel to grow. And really, honestly, the information that I provide on some things, very few people talk about. For example, QRS, this is a PEMF that has way more published research on it than there's not even any other PEMF that's close to as much published, validated research. And yet, I'm one of the few people in the entire PEMF category and the entire health industry, just in general, online, to actually make educational content about it, which is really crazy. There's a lot of just marketing information out there, and there's a lot to sort through. If you wanted, by the way, this presentation that I was going to go over, and you want to go through the slides, because there's a lot of really good information on it, you can just find the link right below my email in the description box, and you can ask for permission to share it, and then I'll share it with you, and I just will email it to you directly. There's a lot of good stuff in here. If you are not really into learning about biology on a cellular level and you don't want to go deep like that, this video is probably not for you. I am going into really important stuff here about something that happens in biology, and it's related to the status of cellular functions. The information that I'll go over in this presentation about how this PEMF affects cellular redox balance, to my knowledge, there is no other PEMF out there who could make a lot of the claims. This really does stand alone when it comes to affecting redox balance. When you affect redox balance, you affect a lot of other things too, like the ways that this PEMF may affect inflammatory signals and just inflammation and oxidative stress in general or something like that. The way that it would do that is different. It's unique to it. And the actual specifications of this PEMF, all the waveform science, I do have another video on the waveforms you can check out on my channel. The way that it does what it does is patented and has been protected very well by the company with over the course of maybe 72 different lawsuits. If you're saying, oh, I can probably find something that's similar, you absolutely cannot find anything similar in the PEMF category. Let's just dive right into kind of our little executive summary here, if you will. Just a quick aside, if you want one-on-one training with me and just a good competitive price for this PEMF, I do work directly with the U.S. importer who supplies all the dealers. But you'll have access as well, if you did want to actually try this PEMF, you'll have access as well to the core guy who has the most experience in the industry, Dr. Bader. Just reach out and I can introduce you anytime. The QRS technology, it's a patented Sawtooth waveform, and the brief overview is that it enhances cellular metabolism through precision electromagnetic therapy. There is definitely over 20 years at this point for sure of research documenting the biological effects of these unique waveforms in this low intensity of, this is how you measure, if you don't know, 2.5 to 10. There's also, of course, Tesla as well. And this way of measuring the strength of electromagnetic fields. And you can convert that to other ways of measuring fields. Tesla is just one way to make a conversion. This is very low, and that is important now that you know about this specific brand of PEMF that I'm kind of covering here, that's on a very low Microtesla range. The QRS, what it does, this particular specific system targets ion transport mechanisms to optimize cellular energy production. Some practitioners might be even seeing this, and before I even tell you anything about anything, just that one statement alone would get them extremely excited, because there's not much out there therapeutically that has any documented proven effect on this. Some people are trying to do this through supplementation, which is fine. It's nowhere near the level of effectiveness of doing it through like an actual electromagnetic waveform, where you can impact every single cell in your entire body at the same time. Redox balanced optimization. We get enhanced mitochondrial function and ATP production. We have improved antioxidant enzyme system activation from this. We have an up to 900% increase in tissue oxygen diffusion reported in clinical studies, and an optimization of NAD-NADH ratio for a balanced cellular redox state. These little things that you can barely see here. Let's actually zoom into it. Hold on. Basically, if you request this PEMF, then you'll be able to zoom in and take a closer look at all this. I did put like some additional information here on the methods or how the QRS is affecting peptide synthesis. I just threw that in because it's a huge trending category area, and peptides are amazing to take them exogenously, which are really trendy right now. Few people know of specific protocols or modalities or equipment that can actually enhance the normal endogenous peptide synthesis process in your body, and thus then further prepare and help the body to better use exogenous peptide supplementation. In fact, I would argue that this is one of the few things out there currently, modality-wise, that has clear, documented understanding of how this is possible, how it can support peptide synthesis. There's probably less than 1% of people in the health space, including practitioners, who are aware of this specific PEMF and how it can have an effect on this. Way less than 1%. It's probably 0.001. Just sad. It's because this company doesn't do any marketing, even though they've been around a long time. Direct stimulation of endogenous peptide production, melatonin, nitric oxide, growth factor support. These are all the things basically that this PEMF is doing. Cellular signaling enhancement through optimized ion gradients in the membranes of cells basically. And this improves receptor sensitivity for exogenous peptide protocols. And it's not just that. We have improved receptor sensitivity for honestly anything. That's the key here. When you restore the intracellular membranes, like inner structures, and then the external outer cellular membrane structure, you improve some of these core cellular signaling processes. The cells just in general are in a healthier, more optimized state, and thus they're way more effective at signaling for all kinds of other nutrient type of factors, let's just say. Their communication in general improves. This is why any additional supplement that you're doing, or drug for that matter, will get significantly enhanced or potentiated in its efficacy. In this presentation, we're going to kind of cover all these different things: redox balance fundamentals, antioxidant systems, mitochondrial ATP synthesis pathways, peptide synthesis signaling mechanisms. We're going to talk about the clinical research and validation briefly, and we're going to talk about the Sawtooth waveform precision versus conventional PEMF, ion transport and calcium cascade processes, cellular energy and membrane potential optimization, and hopefully through all this you'll learn or understand a little bit better the super basics of cellular redox balance and its importance, recognize the role of peptides in cellular signaling, and be able to understand QRS's technology and unique mechanisms over other PEMF that are out there. And if you are a practitioner or you're looking to build a protocol, when you know the fundamentals, it becomes obvious. Would this pair well? And so you'll understand why you could radically, significantly improve the efficacy of hyperbaric, getting results in those chambers in a fraction of the amount of time. A lot of these pages, I didn't want to make the presentation too in-depth. When you see like QR in like highlights here, you see that? QRS technology optimizes. Look at this one on the right-hand side, QRS activates. See how it's kind of highlighted in a different font color. Whenever you see something like that's like just a brief summary statement that comes from the clinical research, instead of like diving into and explaining all the study and the research and all that stuff, which would just be too much. It's just like a citation, almost like referencing, hey, this comes from findings, it comes from research. Cellular redox balance represents the equilibrium between reactive oxygen species production, or ROS production, and antioxidant defense mechanisms. The dynamic balance between oxidation and reduction reactions, protection against free radical damage while maintaining essential signaling, and QRS technology optimizes proper protein folding and enzyme function through enhanced cellular energetics. By the way, just offhand, the only other company, I believe, therapeutic device that has ever mentioned supporting proper protein folding has been NanoV, which is a pretty pricey device where you're inhaling a certain type of vapor. They're the only ones to ever mention that. And when you understand how the QRS works, you realize that NanoV, I understand that now a little bit better. Through my presentation, you'll understand NanoV a little bit better. Then you realize, hold on a second, NanoV is really only having this one very specific signaling pathway or function. that it's affecting. It's real, it does work. It's extremely limited in terms of the signaling path that it's activating, that it affects, versus this PEMF. Not even remotely comparable. And I'm not even going to dive into any further than that. If you just want to go on the internet real quick and Google, how does Nano-V work? You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. For the price point that Nano-V is selling it at, for that kind of limited function, it just doesn't make sense. ATP synthesis and electron transport. And the electron transport chain, this is basically the diagram of it. You can always zoom in on it if you want to look at what's happening with the outer membrane here and the inner membrane and all the different processes, and feel like you're going back to biology class in high school. If you want to take a look at that diagram, it shows where in the membrane layer, the inner membrane layer, complexes 1 through 6 are, and how those transfer electrons across it while pumping positive hydrogen ions across. And you're like, oh my God, this is like some deep stuff. Yeah, because you have to really get down to that fundamental level to understand, oh, this is one of the main aspects of how the QRS is enhancing ATP synthase efficiency by optimizing that proton gradient for energy production. See, this is the level you got to go into. Otherwise, I don't know how this PEMF works. It just seems, how is it able to do all these things? So let's get into it a little further. Remember about the highlights and the different fonts. This is pulling from more research. The different unique signaling cascades that it does. It activates redox sensitive proteins that modulate cellular responses. It affects enzyme functions. In fact, the thiol groups, or known as sulfhydryl groups, inside of various types of really important proteins or amino acids that require proper oxidation states. These core crucial, especially in the nervous system as well, that's rich in thiol groups. All these crucial enzyme functions that have unimaginable downstream effects, they require proper oxidation states, meaning redox has to be working right. Otherwise, all this then starts to dysfunction. That's why, like, little things, when you go back to this level, little alterations can produce massive downstream side effects. Eventually, you get all those symptoms, you get the diseases, you get literally whatever, some kind of dysfunction in the body, or as they say, dis-ease, or dis-ease. This is where QRS, it's affecting these thiol group enzyme functions because of the way that's influencing oxidation processes. Gene expression, of course, then is affected. Everything's interconnected at this level. QRS optimizes redox-sensitive transcription factors, NF-kappa B, NRF2, as they like to say. And I don't know what they say about this. Is it HIF1A? It's HIF1A. In summation, QRS technology restores optimal redox balance by delivering precise electromagnetic signals that enhance cellular energy production. And consider that they were cracking the code on this in the last, like 30 years ago, roughly, saying. 30 years ago plus. Of course, there's studies and research and things that are carried forward from the past in the category, and everything builds upon and builds upon some of the stuff they were really cracking the code on in like the 80s and early 90s, just so you have a reference point. And when you're like, oh my God, how are they able to do this? Why is this so unique? Dr. Fisher could sign just unlimited pretty much checks. I'm not going to go into his whole mission and purpose. He was driven initially to help himself, save his own life. He was super rich, billionaire. Imagine if you bring then together a bunch of super geniuses, and there were some very well-known people, science and researchers in this, but had unlimited check for whatever you wanted to do. Oh, you want to do that study? Oh, you want to do that? It's going to cost $480,000 to do this, or it's going to cost $2 million for doing X, Y, and Z over 5 years. Whatever you guys need, I don't care. Let's just do it. That's a little unusual. It's just a guy that had a lot of money and had assembled a superstar team actually across all of Europe. Many countries were involved, some top people in each one. That's really how they pulled all this stuff out. That's why this is a medical breakthrough, a therapeutic, biological healing technology breakthrough. What are the key players in cellular redox balance? We got our antioxidant defense systems. Some of you may have heard of things like this, like SOD, catalase, glutathione, peroxidase. There's redox cofactors, NAD and NADH. Most people have heard of that because of all the explosion of NAD supportive supplementation, or even doing IVs of NAD. This is critical for cellular redox homeostasis. You got antioxidant molecules, glutathione, vitamin C, vitamin E, and then the mitochondrial functions complex 1 through 6 of the electron transport chain. QRS technology optimizes all of these systems. So it's starting to feel like the holy grail. In some respects it is for a lot of these functions. It can do things that there's not a lot of other direct approaches that can have quite the same effect, and certainly as rapidly as well. And by the way, the normal treatment time to achieve most of the findings was 8 minutes. That 8 minutes would last upwards of 8 to 10 hours. There's a few other things that could last a little bit longer in terms of the body responding to it, 8 to 12, 8 to 15. That very brief treatment time sets up a massive cascade of metabolic adaptations and changes. NAD-NADH redox coupling serves as an electron carrier in hundreds of redox reactions. That ratio reflects cellular energy status. QRS therapy restores optimal NAD-NADH balance through controlled ion transport. Amazing. But you'll find just in general that this PEMF, because of how it's working on these core pathways, there definitely becomes much less of a need for supplementation. Look at it this way. If it's able to restore some of this, which maybe was more optimally functioning when you were 18 years old, 15 years old, 25 years old, we all know for most people it would have been functioning better then. You see what I'm saying? The QRS is a way of temporarily and repeatedly resetting those functions. And there may not then really be a need for supplementation. There are exceptions when people get extremely worn down, and depending on lifestyle and their age and things like that too, where we never want to negate sometimes the absolutely needed nutrient factors. It is possible that somebody really is just super deficient in some of the B vitamins, and that's a fact. You can't just create B vitamins endogenously, not completely to meet all of your demands. That might be an example of like this person needs to do a little bit of the supplementation in conjunction with this PEMF. Absolutely, the body's like, hey, thanks for giving me a few of those extra needed nutrient cofactors, and with this PEMF, we're really going to be able to reset a lot of this stuff. Supplementation, when needed, is a powerful adjunct therapy with this PEMF because it's really going to help the body utilize those nutrients. Over time, when things really get super dismantled and messed up on these fundamental levels, the big challenge then is that you never really know how much of those supplements that you're taking, really how effectively all of your cells, and there's a lot, or all of the needed cells anyways, that you hope that supplement reaches, or you just don't really know everybody has a different appropriate dosage. And you can absolutely guarantee though that realistically, probably a much smaller percentage of what you're consuming and taking is actually being fully utilized. You're not utilizing nutrients from supplements and food like you were when you were 12 years old. That's how you have to look at these things. You can spend a lot of money on supplementation, and they only really will move the needle so much. Peptides definitely have a little bit more of a potent effect because you're not getting into more what we're talking about here, which is cellular signaling. That's why people get from a supplemental standpoint, get such significant outcomes with peptide therapies. Back to QRS has an effect on glutathione reduced form and the oxidized version, and glutathione is involved in so much stuff in the body, it's mind-boggling. One of the more important molecular compounds. This is your primary cellular defense against oxidative stress and really just so much more. QRS enhances glutathione recycling and production by optimizing cellular energy pathways that interconnect. When you zoom in on this little graph here, you'll kind of see how everything's all interconnected. Really, these diagrams are really helpful. Redox imbalance consequences. If you're wondering, like, why is it so important? Most people these days, especially once they hit a certain age, they have oxidative stress. Most people have heard of that. Oh, you have too much oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is at the root of various diseases. This is excessive reactive oxygen species. That's what ROS stands for. Excessive, though, reactive oxygen species production overwhelming cellular antioxidant defense systems. Primary source environmental toxins, external ones, exogenous. What's not mentioned here is with the metabolic disorders and dysfunctions, you basically have a circulation, endogenous production of all kinds of different compounds in the body, like lipopolysaccharides that leak out of the gut. There's a lot of other endogenous toxins, toxic byproducts that come from metabolic dysfunctions. And then, we are absolutely getting bombarded. It's insanity with all the environmental sources. That's what's mainly in your water, air, and food. When you just state it that way, it sounds really simple. Honestly, though, you just need to target and do your best with those specific areas. If you have any questions on really how you make a big impact on those things, I have a lot of research on that type of stuff. Radiation. Mainly nowadays, it's electromagnetic radiation. And most people are saturated 24/7 by varying forms of electromagnetic radiation. And I just want to go back to excessive reactive oxygen species production. Remember that ROS production is an essential part of core cellular functions. We're only talking about when there's an excessive amount. I just wanted to clarify that, because when people see that, sometimes they're like, bad, that must be bad. And it's no, that's absolutely just a needed part of metabolic functions. Oxidative stress, reductive stress, excess reducing equivalents, NADH, that molecule you may have come across, disrupting cellular redox balance. You can also have too much of that, too much production of that. These are some of the common. The other thing that's not mentioned here, by the way, is stress. Should have put that in the presentation, because nowadays, I don't know, justifiably, we probably should put stress at the beginning of these things, to be perfectly honest. Put stress there first. And then like mental and emotional stress. And then absolutely then we could do like physical stress as well, which is the biggest contributing factor, mental, emotional. And then of course there's plenty of physical contributing factors that amplify the stress. Cellular consequences of all that stuff: impaired ATP production, at least as far as when we see mitochondrial dysfunction, by the way, nowadays is a very popular phrase or topic, because they're saying, oh my God, it's integrally related to so many things. Yeah. Hence why you can understand, especially from this presentation, why this PEMF is maybe, when we're talking about mitochondrial dysfunction, maybe one of the better, or still possibly the best, therapeutic approach to helping with this. Even nowadays, even though this thing is like a little old school. Mitochondrial function has to do with impaired ATP production, increased reactive oxygen species generation. This produces basically a cellular energy crisis. Other cellular consequences of all this stuff would be DNA and protein damage, oxidative DNA mutations. This happens, by the way, quite commonly with electrosmog, too much electromagnetic radiation, and it happens with other types of PEMF. Ooh, get it? And that has to do with waveforms that are a little unnatural or too strong. The actual field strength is too strong. Can cause protein misfolding, enzyme dysfunctions, and on these core levels, this downstream produces an unfathomable amount of other dysfunctions metabolically. And this, remember, is more like a sustained inflammatory signaling. That means, like, instead of having a healthy, normal inflammatory signaling response, your body it's like an fire alarm that just never goes off. That's the problem. No problem with inflammatory signaling. We need it to stay alive and heal. This just keeps on going and going. And that one of the main pathways, and there's others involved too, NF-kappa B pathway activation, overactivation. This ultimately results in cellular damage, tissue damage, degeneration, which causes, of course, more problems because everything's interconnected. Accelerated cellular aging, telomere shortening, senescent cell accumulation, decreased tissue regeneration. These are still all very hot topics. You're starting to see, wow, this PEMF may be one of the better hedges against all that. Maybe one of the better ways to prevent all that stuff. This PEMF that's not marketed or advertised still may be one of the more anti-aging things out there that nobody talks about and very few people know about. This is an interesting graph here. You can look at that on your own if you want to get all biological about it. Endogenous peptide synthesis pathways and roles. Zoom out here a little bit. QRS enhances synthesis pathways by optimizing cellular energetics ion transport necessary for protein folding. And to really understand like all of that, you got to look at the graph. QRS technology supports ribosomal energy requirements through enhanced ATP availability. What they're saying here is that when ribosome translation mechanics, this is like DNA transcription, ribosomal translation, these stages right here, these are all have major impact on endogenous peptide synthesis from cells. The QRS is having an effect on ribosomes, thus it's playing a part in that chain, that process. Regulation of peptide synthesis. Remember, peptide synthesis requires optimal cellular energy balance and signaling pathways. Think about it. Why are people getting great benefits from exogenous peptide therapies? They're getting it from those things because their body has already degenerated, because their cells, let's get down to the cellular level. If you want to make it very simple, one of the core ways of saying, hey, that's an old cell versus a younger cell is saying, older versus more vital, of more vital younger cell. And if you were saying I want to make a quick measurement of that, one way that's it's like taking a snapshot of a cell and saying, where's the cell at? Like, how's it doing? How vital is it? Is something known as transmembrane potential. And like a battery, if you measured the voltage of a battery, terminal to terminal, you'd of course have something like, say it's 100 volts or whatever it is. And imagine that on a cellular level. Between the membranes, you're able to actually get a measurement. -50 to -90 millivolts. That is critical for proper protein folding, any type of enzyme function. That's about as fundamental as it gets. When you start to get into even longevity, anti-aging, regeneration, like all these areas, let alone, of course, like disease, what are they talking about? They're doing all their research studies, and usually they end up talking about fundamental processes like this. Everything comes down to core cellular functions like this. All those things get directly impacted by one of the most fundamental things. If the cell is the factory producing stuff, that factory requires what? Energy. Let's say it's electricity. Otherwise, what are they manufacturing? Either nothing, or they're not able to produce. So imagine a factory, it's supposed to produce 100,000 products every minute, and it's only producing 5,000 products every minute. You can break down like a lot of really complex stuff that we see with health and biological function, and we can make it sound pretty simple. In a nutshell, that's some of the core dysfunction. We got cells that are just producing a fraction of what they should be producing. In the case of like exogenous peptide therapy, if you do BPC or KPV or whatever, yeah, your body might respond really well to it when the overall status of your body is just not, the cells, the factories are not producing enough of those specific peptides. And thus, if you supplement with them, they may help you a lot because we're just correcting a production deficiency. Then when you ask the question, why do I have a production deficiency? That's what we're talking about here. And a quick snapshot of, do I have a dysfunctional factory, is the membrane potential. And the discovery of membrane potential and getting into all that stuff, some of the most fundamental deep research on these processes actually happened with some of the scientists and researchers that were involved actually in this PEMF project. Because you got to think about when a lot of this core research was being done, even ion transport and all these different things. That was actually, in fact, over the last 30, 40 years. A lot of stuff got wrapped up into this PEMF project. QRS technology restores cellular energy ion balance necessary for efficient peptide synthesis. Scroll back up. Cellular energy status. This is a really important piece to keep in mind, and another reason why this PEMF is so powerful. 50% of all your cellular ATP is used for maintaining the membrane potential for all those cells. 50%. That's a lot of energy, especially when you're running out as you're getting older, or maybe because you got sick with something, whatever it is, whatever the cases are, anything that's running you down. ATP deficiency impairs ribosomal function. QRS enhances mitochondrial efficiency, thus supporting optimal ATP production. That increased ATP availability directly supports peptide synthesis. QRS is having a direct effect on restoring transmembrane potential. Because think about, it's obvious, because there's actual compatible electromagnetic energy involved. A cell, in and of itself, is an electromagnetic organic structure. If you can help maintain that membrane potential with the energy and the waveform, the frequencies that are coming off the PEMF, your own cells don't have to use as much of their energy in the form of ATP to maintain the membrane potential. The waveform, this PEMF, is just directly acting on the membrane. That means that tremendous reserves of ATP can start to be built up. Your body's always producing a ridiculous amount of ATP. It'll catch a little bit of a break. It only needs a little bit of a break with some consistency with this PEMF for it to start to tap up and catch up with its reserves. There's that catch up. Less ATP that's being produced by the body, which is energy intensive, needs to be used for this. And now what? Then the body will, and the immune system will say, what am I going to do with this extra ATP? Think about it. Well, you can imagine there's a long list of metabolic processes it needs to catch up on. It's just too many things to name. And it would affect every part of your body. If any part of your body happened to not be perfectly healthy and optimized, that would be on the list somewhere. It would require, of course, a certain amount of energy resources to address those things. And you're starting to see, from even just this one aspect that we're talking about here of what this PEMF does, it could then directly, indirectly be of great support to anything, literally anything else in the body, any other process, and thus any other health condition, anything at all. Doesn't matter what, even if there's not a study for it, my answer is yes, of course it's going to help it. And you're starting to kind of see, oh, got it, yeah, well, of course, because my body has what, 10 times as much energy left over to put towards anything else? Redox state and ion gradients, NAD and NADH ratio directly influences protein synthesis pathways, if you didn't know that. And you might recognize some of these electrolytic minerals. We got sodium ions, we got hydrogen, positive protons, potassium, calcium. Notice something here though. Calcium, C, that is actually a specific, special, crucial form that are involved with just about anything. Many different processes in the body in terms of signaling that form of calcium. The ion gradients for these, and actually magnesium was affected as well. The ion gradients that move these core electrolytic minerals or elements around, all of these things that get affected by these waveforms, these regulate peptide signaling. QRS induces a calcium cascade activation process for protein synthesis enzymes. There is also, if you look up, you can Google further if you want to learn more about the calcium cascade process. It's essentially how this technology is moving calcium protons through cellular membranes. Long story short, this stuff gets like really deep into biology, and that plays crucial roles. That movement of calcium like that in any type of cell that you can name. If you have a nerve dysfunction, something going on in the neurons, still applies what I'm talking about here. And then interestingly, when you actually look up dysfunctions that affect something like calcium ions, if you want to learn more about calcium cascades functions and what it does with calcium ions and protons and stuff like that, there's a over 500-page book, and I'll put actually a link to it right below in the description box as well. On my email, you have this presentation and the book. It's well over 500 pages, and it's all related to QRS, and in there you can 100% read about calcium. And if this PEMF only had an effect on calcium protons and electrons, let's say that's the only thing it had an effect on, this would probably still be one of the better PEMF and just overall health products on the market. That's how fundamentally important calcium is. Some practitioners will understand what I'm saying. They'll be like, whoa, yes, oh my God, I totally get it. And it does way more than that. They cracked the code on that calcium cascade a while ago. Dr. Linus Pauling, everybody knows him, super famous scientist, top 20 contributor to the field of science, Nobel Prize winner, I think twice. He was integrally involved with that specific topic I was just talking about, electric minerals, calcium, things like that. He was heavily involved with that phase of research. Still to this day, scientists are coming to learn claims that he made and things he discovered and further validating them decades ago. That's how far ahead he was. QRS difference, precision over power. This is just a little brief blurb, and I have a separate video about PEMF waveforms and how QRS is different. Just to reiterate this very briefly here, QRS has a patented Sawtooth waveform. This creates precise directional electromagnetic induction, unlike conventional sine waves or square waves or triangular waves, basically like most PEMF. It's directional. It's moving ions. It's moving it's moving it's moving things on a particle level, let's just say, or on an ion subatomic level in one direction. And it's a little more complex than that. That's why I have a video. It's low Tesla, as we already talked about. It operates within the body's normal, natural electromagnetic environment. Do you see how some PEMF could be considered extremely unnatural? And you almost have to scratch your head and wonder what the effects possibly could be of something extremely unnaturally powerful. Because when you're understanding, wait a minute, oh my God, all these core cellular processes, they're very low Tesla, where all of those things actually operate. Because that's all that the body needs endogenously to produce all of those effects that we want and that we need. It does not technically require something stronger. The reason I'm phrasing that very specifically that way is because one of the sales pitches or claims of PEMF with much stronger electromagnetic fields is, oh, but that's because you need it. You need it. You need the strong field. Who says? Because that goes against everything we know in biology and just research on PEMF in general. And that basically, no, you can affect and impact every cell in the middle of your liver or whatever, or in your bones, in your bone marrow. You can affect things there with Microtesla. Get what I'm saying? That depth of penetration of the electromagnetic radiation field doesn't require much strength to permeate through the body and literally come out the other side. QRS phase-aligned induction. If you don't watch my video, it might not make a lot of sense. Magnetic field and electromotive force work in phase for optimal cellular effects. QRS, here's some patents, international patents. By the way, most PEMF have no patents. You got to ask yourself, why would most PEMF have no patents? Think about it. QRS controlled positive hydrogen, that's what it stands for, the element of hydrogen, proton, sorry, I should say proton, hydrogen proton movement, 2 millisecond electromotive force duration, and the optimal negative pullback for ion inertia. That's to do with the Sawtooth function. QRS selective ion mobilization, movement of hydrogen protons as we talked about, and calcium with C+. QRS directional transport, sustained ion movement rather than oscillation. Square waves, sine waves, they create an oscillation. They move an ion one direction, and then equally they pull it back the opposite direction, thus negating the movement. Typical PEMF go to 100 to 2000 Tesla, and spark gap PEMF and mid-range and high ones go way, way higher than that. Frequency range of QRS is 0.1 to 10,000. This is extremely unusual. And the reason this is like a symphony. It's like broad spectrum. Because your body actually has broad spectrum like that. And nested within the harmonics of that spectrum is where all the cell signaling is happening. All the communication, the coherences across different parts of the body. That's all happening in that range. There's a lot of PEMF out there, majority, where it might say something like this. It's like you had a symphony and then you selected a violin or maybe just percussion, like a drummer, and you just yanked him out of the symphony. And you were like, all right, I want you to play a symphony. What do you think is going to happen? That's one of the best analogies for most PEMF. They just, whoop, we'll just take this instrument and yank it out. Now play the whole symphony. Maybe you'll discern something, but it's definitely technically just no longer a symphony. You get what I'm saying? Even if they played the melody or something like that. It's going to have a very inferior, different function to it. And in fact, usually what happens is there's agitation and overexcitation, and the body actually a lot of times ignores the signal of the waveform. Anyways, I'm not going to get too far into it. Most PEMF have sine or square waves, very limited functions. There's some benefits, but it's very limited for a couple things. There's usually a random or non-specific ion transport with these other waveforms that are on the market, which is why it's very difficult for PEMF to actually make any health claims that are backed up by anything, like proven. They'll definitely be creative about making health claims, most PEMF, for this reason right here. Yeah, they just have limited benefits, and they try to make a lot of claims about health benefits. If you actually ask them to explain how you get some specific benefit from their PEMF, 99% of the time a PEMF can't explain that to you. And yes, I know some well-known influencer told X, Y, and Z, and it's $15,000, and you've seen it all over the place, advertised, and blah, 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 blah. All you got to do is test out what I'm saying. Prove me wrong. QRS core mechanism, the calcium cascade. Here's a fun little graph that kind of gets into all this. QRS Sawtooth waveform creates controlled proton, remember this is a hydrogen proton movement, also referred to as H, hydrogen hopping. Local acidification occurs around cell membranes, and the T is a 2-second force, optimal for ion inertia. It's having an effect on positive hydrogen. I know for some of you, you're like, I still don't understand. A good trained practitioner would, and if not, you can just copy paste that, or just AI is really useful, and just have it explain to you, like how protons of hydrogen and tissue acidification and local, like how that affects everything in your body. This is very fundamental stuff. If you're, like some people have heard of like being more in a state of acidosis, depending on what your pH balance is in various organs of the body, this is going to fundamentally affect all kinds of things and create all kinds of side effects and symptoms and dysfunction if there's not balance there. And this is actually having an effect on all that stuff through an electromagnetic fashion. Calcium ion displacement, because of the increase in hydrogen proton displacement, calcium from membrane binding sites, it gets displaced. Then the specific form, C+, enters cells, triggering the calcium cascade response. This is usually involved, this is a part of a universal second messenger system activation. It's part of a very fundamental process of cell signaling. It is interrelated with a wide variety of other metabolic functions and processes. Metabolic activation cascade. This then induces enzyme activation, which is an accelerated metabolic process. Things speed up, basically. One difference between being 15 years old and 56 is this right here. Literally your speed of enzyme activation. It's a lot more than that too. Membrane gates open in cells, improving ion exchange. We have improved protein synthesis, stimulation, and enhanced peptide production. Mitochondrial function enhancement. The QRS affects mitochondrial and redox enhancement. We talked about that earlier, how it's increasing about 50%. It's supporting, the 50% your body normally has to produce for membrane potential, maintaining it, supporting that process. It's basically a way of breaking vicious cycles of cellular energy depletion. It's enhancing the electron transport chain. We have improved mitochondrial respiratory efficiency, thus enhanced fatty acid metabolism and glucose utilization. Clinical studies show increased cellular energy balance, and we're supporting mitochondria at the molecular level. Redox balance restoration happens because of the 900% increase in tissue oxygen diffusion as a result. Enhanced antioxidant enzyme activity happens. Direct nitric oxide synthesis stimulation for improved signaling. I had a couple people that were recently at a trade show and got some fancy testing that was able to look at nitric oxide. And they had done the QRS PEMF. I think they did 8 minutes, and I'm trying to remember how long before. It might have been 15 minutes before, maybe longer. Point was, what the practitioner who was offering the diagnostic test, what he said was, normally seeing this increase in nitric oxide function is what we see if somebody takes one of the best nitric oxide supplements and then actually get the test. This is something that you don't have to keep taking a nitric oxide supplement. The difference, though, I will just tell you, is that at least as far as nitric oxide is concerned, because of the very novel fundamental way that this PEMF raises nitric or increases the synthesis of it and function, as well as its effect on the entire endothelium system, the entire cardiovascular and pulmonary system, because of its effects on all of that and more really that are all interrelated, the circulating level of nitric oxide will stay elevated for much, much longer than supplementation, even the best supplementation on the market, which is a lozenge. Circulating will be elevated for much, much longer, and it is absolutely way more, it's addressing more of the the fundamental causal aspects of the organs and down to the cellular level that are involved in proper nitric oxide production. And of course, there's various forms of nitric oxide. I'm just referring to the one that everybody's most focused on, that plays some of the most crucial signaling functions and benefits to the body. And you can always do and then another session. If you're having an elevated level for hours and hours, then you can just do another session and get more hours and hours of elevated production. When you do the supplementation form, these are more like the nutrient aspects of the body utilizing those things to endogenously produce it. It doesn't necessarily, when you do the supplemental approach, it will not go in and correct all these deeper levels that I'm talking about here. It is a signaling molecule. Absolutely, I am in agreement that increasing that signaling molecule, regardless of how you're doing it, like if you are supplementing, because it is a signaling molecule, it will have its precise effects all the way down to the cellular levels that we're discussing. What our ultimate goal is to support the systems in the body, all the various aspects of endogenous production of nitric oxide. Ideally, we're trying to get into more endogenous production versus supplementation. Some of you are going to say, yeah, you'll reach a certain point based on various factors where you are still deficient in certain nutrients and need it from the diet. I do still agree with that aspect of things. I'm trying to just point out priorities and how much of a greater benefit or outcome you would get by doing the QRS. Firstly, I would still agree that a lot of people probably need still more nutrient factor support, and thus the right type of nutrient factor support supplementally will give you more precursors for making even more nitric oxide production when you're using this PEMF. I just want to be clear that supplementation with these nitric oxide nutrient cofactors is still much more limited in its scope of therapeutic action versus PEMF. Granted, there's a big difference in price, so there's that too. Ideal world, of course, you'd have the PEMF and you would be supplementing. Hormone production enhancement, just another aspect of what this PEMF does. There's clear evidence that, this is a citation from some research studies, can stimulate melatonin production. Even if this PEMF, this was the only thing it did, the only thing, this PEMF would be worth it. It would be worth investing in. There's not a lot of things out there that actually have a known effect on supporting improvements in endogenous melatonin production. And you can already, if functional health well enough, you already can start to infer if it is improving endogenous melatonin production. Wait, hold on a second. If it's able to do that electromagnetically, might it be having an effect on other aspects of the neuroendocrine function in the brain, and thus cascading down through the rest of the endocrine system? Then that then would indirectly be affecting this and this, based on just even all the melatonin and circadian rhythm studies that are out there. You can already start to even infer just from this one very specific thing. Melatonin is really important, especially more so when you get into what aspects of the body need to be optimized to improve melatonin production. QRS production therapy produces documented effects on sleep quality, regeneration, anti-cancer properties. One of the first benefits that a lot of people share is just how much their sleep improved, even the first night and second night. And usually we recommend about 1 hour full body, sensitive, relax. Has a lot of different effects on the vagus nerve and parasympathetic nervous system as well. When you get into what this PEMF does, there's a lot of really important metabolic processes that happen during sleep, really crucial stuff. And it's quite complex as well, based on the different phases of sleep. This PEMF, when you look at the different phases and all the different metabolic processes that have to happen when you're sleeping, the QRS, once you understand how it works, it would support any phase of sleep. It would support any of the metabolic processes that happen during sleep. It's not, oh, it improved my melatonin. That's great. That's great, sure. There's a lot more that happens when you're sleeping. This affects so much more. It's just too much to discuss. It is really like a superstar for helping you to bring back and optimize all the different functions that happen in terms of what we would consider optimized sleep, all the different cycles. If you have a sleep tracker, a wearable, absolutely guaranteed 100%, your first or second night, you'll see improvements in your sleep on your sleep tracker. People that are really messed up, sure, sometimes it's a week went by and then all of a sudden it's boom, wow, there's some big improvements in my sleep. There's exceptions. Most people, they'll see it on their wearable very quickly. And just subjectively, you wake up the next day and you're like, oh yeah, it was so noticeable how much better I slept. One of my other favorite things to improve sleep, by the way, is a mattress cooler. It's a little topper on your mattress that keeps it cool. Makes a world of difference and proven. Consistent QRS usage leads to reduced cortisol and stress hormone sensitivity through balanced cellular signaling. It's having a tremendously complex effect on your entire HPA axis, your neuroendocrine system. That's what I'm saying. When you know how it works and just let alone all the things that, remember, electromagnetic fields can pass through anywhere. 100% has an effect on every part of your brain, like structurally. Just to think about that cascade downwards from a neuroendocrine perspective. You find more and more aspects to this, why you can keep justifying, oh, so it'll just help with anything? It'll be a significant adjunct therapy to anything? Yes. Yes, the answer is always yes. Directly stimulates, as we were talking about before, NO production in vascular tissues, enhanced vasodilation, self-signaling, improved microcirculation, tissue oxygenation due to all of that. Absolutely supports immune function and neurological signaling pathways. We got growth factor and insulin pathways. QRS technology enhances insulin sensitivity and cellular glucose uptake. Provides critical support for IGF pathway activity. There's another slide previously that got into that more. Creates an optimized cellular environment for growth and repair processes. A lot of athletes love this. A lot of athletes use this one. Very well-known athletes use this specific PEMF. In studies, we found it enhances macrophage activity for immune peptide production. See if there's anything unique on here. The protocol integration strategy on how you'd integrate it with peptides is cellular preparation using the QRS as much as you can. And this actually goes for any IV therapy, stem cell therapy, like anything. In this case, we're talking about exogenous peptides. But you just want to do this before anything that we'd be considering a therapeutic agent or nutrient supplement. Then we get way improved delivery, and then we have way more sustained, prolonged therapeutic benefits because of it. And you can pause this and read this if you want to on your own time. So what it would look like is in the morning, you do your session, evening, you do your session, or if you're a business or practitioner, you just do it first thing when your client or patient comes to see you before you do anything else. Ideally, you want to take your supplements or whatever within 30 minutes after a QRS session. And over time, you absolutely can reduce dosages. Administer peptides in the case of that after evening QRS session. Some of them do work better before bedtime. Could you imagine doing pineal peptide after doing the relax mode with this? I fixed a lot of people, a lot of sleep dysfunctions just with a couple peptides and a supplement and this QRS. Of course, wearing blue light blockers, glasses, super crucial as well. As they say here, consider using slightly lower dosages because the effects will be greatly amplified, including caffeine, by the way, just FYI. 20 years studies, we talked about that, we talked about this and this. Clinical studies, they have gone up through the years here for sure. Some of the largest amounts of studies were like 2005 and under, actually. This bar chart's a little weird. There's a lot going this way over here into the past as well. Maybe more so. They keep on doing research all over Europe. They never really stop, which is pretty cool. They keep on just, looking at what the system can do. Future directions. We've already talked about that. Personalized medicine. You can pause, take a read here if you want to look at all the different protocols that it can enhance. And there's a 6-month return window. It's the only equipment in the entire health industry that has a 6-month return window. And now that you understand more of how it's the Holy Grail and does so many incredible things on a cellular level, and I keep saying it'll help with literally anything, one way to put your money where your mouth is as a company, you got all the research, you got everything. One way to actually be like, hey, trust us, would be having a 6-month return window. That would mean that your return rate from customers would have to be so low, so minimal, that you could thrive in business. And the company's been around a while. They've always had a 6-month return window. This is the only product I know in the entire health space that has a 6-month. That means that people, by the way, are buying this thing for treating or using it for an extremely wide variety of health goals and health conditions. Very wide variety. And that means almost all of them. It's technically 99%. The return rate's about 1%, which is crazy. About 1% per year. 99% of people who buy it for whatever, they're satisfied. You would struggle. You'd struggle to find a modality out there or product that has anywhere near that type of satisfaction rate. You'll get coaching and training and guidelines throughout that entire phase, whether you're a practitioner or whatever, to make sure that you're getting the results. That is part of our job. I just want to make that perfectly clear. That is part of why the satisfaction rate is so high. If you have any more specific questions, I'm available 7 days a week. Just email me, fitforreviews@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to coach you as well in how you might pair this PEMF with other modalities. So that is definitely something I can guide you on. That's it for now. Please subscribe. It really helps my channel grow. Otherwise, nobody will ever know about me and learn this information. Feel free to also share my video, please, with any practitioners you're working with or family or friends. I'm always available to chat. I sell this system and I sell a lot of other things, including actually a few other PEMF devices as well.